a lot of the time when we get called in, it's because there might be a change in leadership. And the new leaders come in with all the right intentions, but the previous environment that was created have them adopt this team, and they're like, whoa, and then I get this a lot. I often ask the question, now that you've been in leadership now, Michelle, for the last 3 months in your new role, what have been the 3 most surprising things to you? And then in one way, shape or another, in that top 3 will always be, I didn't know how hard culture change would be.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Game Changer Podcast. My name's Emile Dutro. I'm your host, and I am thrilled today to be chatting with Emile Studham, not to be confused with Emilio Estevez. We already chatted that through. But, guys, here we go. This is going to be a fantastic conversation. For those of you that know my background, I spent some time in corporate America. I spent some time in the military as a firefighter, all of which require teamwork in some form or fashion. So tune in. As I read his background and bring you on board, if that is not your background, I want you to replace everything that says corporate America or job or whatever with the word relationship, because everything we're going to talk about, I promise you, pertains to you in some form or fashion. All right, that said, let me tell you a little bit about him. He's a leadership speaker. You really should check out his TEDx talk. It is phenomenal. Cooperation strategist and creator of Catch the Good movement, which I love, a practical framework designed to help teams build trust, strengthen culture, and make positive behaviors habitual. In his TEDx talk, he challenges the idea that great teams are built on great teams built on talent alone, arguing instead that high performance is a result of practiced behaviors, intentional rituals, and daily reinforcement of what works. That's going to be a big part of our chat. Through his work with organizations and leaders around the world, he focuses on something deceptively simple, helping people notice and reinforce the good, so cooperation becomes the norm, not the exception. And today's conversation isn't just for executives or elite teams. If you've ever been part of a family, a workplace, a partnership, or any environment where humans have to work together, this conversation is for you. Emile, welcome to the podcast. I'm thrilled to have you.
Hey, Michelle. Thank you for that. That's a lovely little intro. Excited to be here.
Yes, beautiful. I'm sure people already can recognize your accent. Where are you currently?
I'm currently in Toronto, in the Etobicoke, just an inner city suburb, but I'm an Aussie. So I've lived here now on and off for, I can't believe, about 27 years. So we came over here to do student exchange, did kinesiology, came back and forwards, built a couple of companies. But for the last, 15 years, I've been pretty settled in Toronto with a little bit of going back and forth. 2 young children now, married to Andrea. Her last name is Estevez, so if I took her last name, I'd be Emilio Estevez. So that's our little chuckle for the day. And jumping around all over the city and all over the country and a lot into the US now, doing our work at Corporation Works, which I just absolutely love.
Fantastic. So for those folks, just to give a little more background and foundation of you and how you came to found this whole Catch the Good framework, which I love. Talk us through, because you have a team background. So what is your background, and what did you notice missing or that was problematic that led you to the work you're doing today? And then we're going to dive in.
Yeah, so my first journey was I was a school teacher. I was a secondary school teacher, physical education and mathematics. And through my travels in my early years, I threw caution to the wind as a 23, 24-year-old. And in between my degrees, I came to Canada after a few years back and forth and started teaching children in schools how to play Aussie rules football. So there's an Aussie rules football here. And because I was too young to rent a car, I had to catch public transport with this Bauer hockey bag filled with balls, teaching children this Australian game that I love. And it really captured the minds of the girls actually back in 2003. And as a sport, Aussie rules back home used to be mainly just for boys, and girls would play netball. But now it's fantastic. We've got Aussie rules football for both men and women, which is great. Now, I soon learned that people weren't buying the sport per se from the schools. They were buying the mateship part of our work and the connection that the children were making to physical activity, irrespective of their ability at sport. And so now we started to see a change in behavior of the students because they weren't worried about how good they were at sport. They were enjoying the cooperation part, the mateship and the teamwork part. So a few years back home, came back and then started a company called Aussie X, started renting cars, hiring more people. We did Aussie rules football, netball, and cricket as our first three sports. And that's where the mateship part and the teamwork part really took off. And the Aussie X stood for the Aussie experience. And so, like I said, no one really cared too much about the sport per se, but the principals, the schools, and the parents loved the fact that their children, who were usually not overly active, were now coming home saying, hey, I loved getting active. I loved the exhilaration of movement, because I found in North America, because you have a collegiate elite sports model, if you're not good at sport, there's not many avenues to just play. And I didn't like that. So I challenged that, and the business grew to about 3 years in. We started to expand quite quickly. We went on Dragon's Den here in Canada, and we got a handshake deal. It was a great episode, and it really bolstered the business quite quickly. We went from 20 people to 60 pretty much over one school year. In that time, all of my leadership gaps came to the foreground. I wasn't building much management layers, and I fell trapped to what I call the player-coach syndrome. I was doing a lot of the playing instead of coaching, and I was creating a loop of mistrust. You know, when you jump on the field too often as a leader and just do the work for your team, they learn helplessness. You get dirty that they're not working, and the loop is quite vicious. And so that made me quite unwell. I lost a lot of weight. I lost a lot of brain cells through this whole experience. But then luckily I learned this model that started in professional sport back home in Australia that helped teams, you know, really create a safe environment to have open and honest feedback with each other. So from the field to the leaders to the players, and the players to each other. And once I caught wind of this model, I used it inside of Aussie X, got myself out of the player coach syndrome, got myself off sleeping on the floor in the office, and built an environment where the team felt like they owned the organization. And that was the beautiful part about it. So sort of 3 years later, I started using this model and augmenting it and improving it with my mates in the entrepreneur space, to the point where I worked myself out of the business, and now I coach executive teams and corporate teams all over the country and into the States, using sort of this fundamental base model, but very much have really opened it up to a lot more cooperation focus, and really driving the fact that if you create the right environment for your people, it will create team behavior. Behavior will then drive your cooperation, and your cooperation will elevate your capacity as an organization. So here we are today at Cooperation Works, and I just love the work, because it was I've turned my pain into my purpose, which is really a lovely space to be in.
So I want to go back, because it's always interesting to me, the moments where people hit rock bottom, if you will, where
Yeah.
it really hits the fan. And you
Yeah.
talk about this in your TED Talk about being so exhausted that the reference you just made, you literally couldn't, if you can't get out of bed and walk across the room, it's just easier to sleep on the floor,
Yeah.
you know, which is a pretty funny solution to a problem. But I want to go back to that point in time for you.
Yeah.
And I want to reference, because it's going to come up over and over in this conversation. You ended your talk with the lines, "You are safe, you do belong, and we are in this together."
Yeah.
So for anyone listening right now, whether they are on a team or they lead a team, for a fact you're in a relationship with someone, whether that's your
Yeah.
next door neighbor, your family, your children, your spouse. So this statement resonates across the board, no matter who you are in relationship with.
100%.
I want to go back to your mindset, though, back before all of this got incorporated and everything clicked and figured out, and you turned the ship around.
Yeah.
On the line, just on "you are safe," you're feeling the need to do everybody's job, which
Yeah.
I think most entrepreneurs, you know, they hire a VA. That's the first step. And then they do the work for them because they don't think they're going to do it right, or they redo it all. So there's this safe factor.
Yeah.
What did it take for you to learn, build, be accepting with, whether it's a lack of control or more trust? because it's a little bit of a balance between the two in order to let go. And if you're ever going to be a good leader, whether you're leading a team of 1, 2,
Yeah.
or 800, that has to exist. So what happened with you back in those days to
Yeah.
get you from, I need to do it all, they're not going to do it right, I can't trust that they will, I'm going to have to redo everything again anyway, so it's just easier for me to do it in the first place. What
Yeah.
happened on your mindset to make that change?
The the primary thing that I did first was, well, we created a version of our what we call our cooperation code or culture code, like we got down. So we created a list of team behaviors wrapped around a mantra, and our mantra that we forged at Aussie X at the time was extraordinary impact. How do we have an extraordinary impact on everyone we come in contact with, namely the children? But that also meant, the principal, the teachers, the office staff, the janitors of the school. It was just all about extraordinary impact. Then what were the behaviors that we were displaying that was holding us back as a team to having an extraordinary impact? That created a bit of clarity on what's not serving us. And then the opposite of those behaviors, we just translated into, okay, well then if that's not working, why don't we do this? So then we created a list of behaviors that then would, if we lived them, we would have an extraordinary impact. Very clear team behavior, and the clarity is really important because you either do it or you don't. And that's kind of what you want. Now, the next step, though, the most important part, we spend a bit of time also learning about our different personality profiles, which is what we do today. But then to answer your question directly, the main thing I did is I received feedback from the team first. So I got the team to give me feedback on what they loved about me and what I was doing well. So catch my good, but then share with me what they were seeing that I was doing that was holding me back from being the ideal leader for them. Then what team would you recommend me that I do? And that's just a simple framework that we have now in our curriculum. We call it the sorted out framework: strengths, opportunities for growth, recommendations for improvement, and then takeaways. So the T is the action part. So you kind of do that together. But if you use that, catch the good first, share what you can improve on, and then your recommendations for improvement, you've got a great framework that's repeatable, and you can use that as a review framework for most anything. But the point being, once I got feedback from the team, I could then actually adjust my behavior according to the needs of the team. I had my opinion and I did the same assessment on where I thought I could improve, but to hear it from them and where it matched up was great. And there was also some blind spots. So by actually eliciting feedback first from your team, they would tell me, get out of our way. Stop doing that activity. We know how to do that with our eyes closed. Get out of the way. And that was the best thing that could have happened to me, because then the more I got out of the way, the more I learned I could trust them. Then here was the critical part. We started to begin our team meetings with catch the good stories, using extraordinary impact and the team behaviors as the reference point. So now I would turn up to a meeting, I would facilitate the meeting, so I would speak last, but I'd hear all these stories of why I could trust the team. The problem in the player coach syndrome is you're jumping on and you're severing the trust tree connection.
Yep.
And then you're saying to the team, doesn't matter, I'll do it anyway. So they learn helplessness. And so you can't learn how to trust. And so that was the loop. Get clear on who we are and what we stand for with our code. Get feedback from the team first, and then start meetings with storytelling of people living the code. And that's how simple. And then we let the compounding impact of those stories come to life. And I can tell you one thing now for all our viewers: if you want to build a high-performing culture, a huge part of that is storytelling. Culture's built through storytelling. So if you've got a code, tell stories through your code. And then progressively, every quarter, I was just doing less and less, getting kicked out of meetings because there was a feedback loop up to me to teach me how to be the best leader for them. And it worked beautifully.
Well, I love this. And again, I want to remind everybody, swap this out if you are a
Mm.
solopreneur or a stay-home mom. So you're not on a big team and you think, "Oh my goodness, I'm going to click off right here. This is not for me." I'm going
Yeah.
to say this again about relationships and what I love about your three statements. And I'm gonna make this first about relationship and significant relationship, married or not,
Mm.
and then we're gonna talk a little bit about, we had referenced the fire department before we
Yeah.
started this podcast. So critical environments, environments that are very high pressure. Maybe you're a surgeon, you're emergency medical services, you're in the military. All of these things that are very critical teamwork, life and death. It's just high impact. But table that for a second. So just imagine a relationship, like you said about feedback and talking, asking someone, to include your children, do
Mm.
you feel safe?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
feel that you belong? Do you feel that we are in this together?
Yeah.
And if you've created enough of an environment for people to feel safe enough to be honest, I bet you that is going to be a very interesting conversation.
Yep.
Because if any one of those, let alone a combination, is off in any way, that to me is most likely the foundation or the background behind anything going wrong. So instead of
100%.
treating the symptom of why a relationship's
Yeah.
not working out,
Yeah.
let's get to the cause. And people do all kinds of things when they don't feel safe. Right now, I'm going to make you feel bad, or I'm going to,
Yeah.
not show up for you, or I'm not going to
100%.
support you in your next
They'll
endeavor
make
because
things
I don't
up.
feel safe. I don't feel like I belong,
Yep.
and I don't feel like we're in this as a team.
Yep.
Right. And even if that's subconscious and it hasn't been brought to your conscious awareness yet, your behavior is going to come out because this is the root cause. So I love
100%.
these three statements. I love them as questions. I want to bring in this critical factor of anybody listening who is in a career field where decisions have to be made under
Yeah.
pressure, where these three as a credence are going to become a
Yeah.
very critical thing to your mission.
Yep.
What are you finding when you work with groups where this is the factor and safety, belonging, feeling like a team is missing? I can
Yeah.
tell you from my perspective,
Mm.
and we chatted about this. If you're running into a burning building and you're a 2-person crew, if in your mind you don't feel safe with that other person,
Yeah.
you don't feel that they can carry their own weight, you feel like they're going to make a misstep, there's no way in the world you're going to behave like a team. There's
Yeah.
just no way in the world, because I feel like I got to look out for me because your odds are going to screw things up and get us both killed. And this is the police department. It doesn't military. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. So to wait for the crisis, to
Yeah.
wait for a catastrophe to figure out, holy cow, we do not work well together, is too late. And
Yeah.
I don't know how bad that catastrophe is going to be, but it's going to be
Yeah.
much more catastrophic than it needed to be had you just had these open, honest conversations to begin with.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what your experience has been in working with people, especially on the honesty and vulnerability.
Mm.
When people, if you already don't feel safe and you're asking me for feedback, I don't know. Am I going to have to worry about retaliation? Am I going to worry that you're going
Yeah.
to fire me? Am I going to worry that this is going to come back and haunt me? Because asking
Yeah.
for feedback and getting honest feedback
Yeah.
are two very different things.
100%.
So
Yeah.
what has to be done to create an environment where these conversations, and let's again make this down to a relationship level in a
Yeah.
marriage,
Yeah.
what needs to be done to create that environment of safety to be able to talk honestly? Otherwise, none of this matters.
Yeah, that's right. I think, look, there's a few things at play there because you are exactly right. If I'm walking into a new team and I've done we do a quite an in-depth discovery. It's interesting because I've always been taught that I choose the client. And by that I mean, if through the discovery process I uncover that the leader need you to come in and fix my people because they're no good, and there's that authoritarian sort of narcissistic language in there, then that's a big no for me. Because in our line of work, because the first feedback loop is the team to the leader, it's only going to do more harm than good. And it's difficult to change that leader's mindset. So the leader has such a huge impact on the environment that they create because emotional contagion is a real thing, right? If the leader's nervous, anxious, whatever it is, the energy gets transferred down. So the state, and I mean the mental state and mindset of the leader is really critical in this environment, right? Now, if it's a relationship with your partner or any given team, outside of that little side point, the first thing is to create, well, what do we want the place to be like? So actually going through the exercise of, how would we describe and because you can do this exercise with your family, I think it's a great example. How would we describe our family unit now? So you're with your partner and you're going through these questions. How would we describe our family now? Just get all the words down and share. And some of it will be great. Some of it might not be so great, but that's okay.
Yep.
Well, then how do we want it to look like is another next great question, right? So now you've got a state of where we are to where we want it to be. A middle question as well, Michelle, it's a great one, is if we were in a Big Brother house and we sent the Big Brother video to our friends, what would our friends say about us? Right. So it's a great empathy exercise and a vulnerability exercise. And we also know that empathy and vulnerability are neuromagnets. They draw us in. So just the act of these questions is creating a toward movement with your husband or wife or with your people that you're leading, right? So now you've got a bit of an idea of where you are today and where you want to be tomorrow. And where we wanted to be tomorrow for Aussie X back in the day was extraordinary impact. That's what we just drilled it down to 2 words. Then you ask, okay, again, what are the behaviors that we're displaying that's holding us back from being that ideal framework? And what do we need it to be then? Now you've got the framework to have the conversation about your performance as a family, as a team, as a unit, as a fire brigade, or whatever it might be. Then you can have the conversations about performance because the behaviors because behaviors drive results and actions get outcomes, then you give feedback through the behavior. So I might say, I love working with you, Michelle, because you communicate little and often. And here's my example. I love that about you. I'm always in the know. Little and often, or communicate little and often, might be the behavior that we've chosen on our list. Then I might say, but I also think you can improve on being well prepared and early for meetings. The last few team meetings, you could see on your PowerPoint you weren't ready. There was mistakes there. I think with a little bit of extra preparation at the front end, you'll do a better job when you get to our team meetings. My recommendation for that is don't schedule anything 30 minutes before your team meetings. So now we've gone through a framework where I've actually caught you good. So I've built the trust bank a little bit, shared the opportunities for growth and my recommendations for improvement in that sequence. And it's going to be heard a lot better from the receiver taking on that feedback. So first build your version of your code and then practice the feedback using the code as the reference point. It makes it less personal. And because you've created that framework, which is your code together, it's now relevant to us. And that's the critical part.
And here's what's coming to me. Like, I'm just thinking about how I would, receive that feedback. And it goes back to your words there. Everybody go listen to his TED Talk, for crying out loud. Yeah. It comes down to wholeheartedly, if I feel safe with you, if you have made me feel like I belong on this team, you've made me feel like I belong here, and you've made me feel that we are in this together, then you're telling me this for those reasons.
100%.
That's why you're sharing this with me. You want me to even do better, belong, more,
Yep.
Fit in more, but if that's not in place, I'm going to feel attacked. I'm going to feel judged.
Yep.
I'm going to feel defensive. And so I think here's another thing. I got a million takeaways from this chat and your talk and all the rest of it. Watching somebody's response will let you know where they stand on your 3 points. If they are offended and defensive, we have an issue with safety, belonging, and whether or not we feel that we're in this together. Period. Full stop.
Yep.
Because if those three were in place and solid, I'm so good here and I'm so valued here and we are in this as a team. You know, my daughters both used to, row, like rowing
Right.
on a
Yeah.
crew, right?
Yes.
And
Right.
so one person being out of time, the whole boat's off.
Yep.
One
100%.
person cannot
Yep.
be rowing at a different click than
Yep.
every other, oar that's in the
Yep.
water. And
Yep.
so for one person to point out, hey, a half a second quicker, just quicken up your pace. Why? Because we obviously we're on the same boat.
Yeah.
There is no other option. You can't row faster and get there before we all do. It's not going to, this implied we're on the same team here, right? And
Yep.
so I'm going to start watching this in my own life, is watching conversations and watching people's response. It's almost like if there's a bad reaction, it could immediately be in your own head. Which of these three do I feel is missing? And that's
go
on
back
me.
to, yeah.
Like I would take
Yep.
ownership of that. If you don't feel safe, if you don't feel like you belong, if you don't feel like you're on my team, that's on me to figure out before we chase down a PowerPoint or anything else, what's going on here.
Yep.
It truly is so imperative to the heart of all of this.
Yep.
For you, in looking at where you were, sleeping on the floor, turning everything around, now working with other organizations everywhere, I'm curious, back in the day when things weren't so great and you were the, know-it-all, do-it-all guy,
Yep.
how
Yep.
did you define success then? Because I'm sure it's going to be similar to people who are that solopreneur who can relate to that completely, probably slept on the floor last night themselves so they could be first one at work
Yeah.
and prove that point. And how do you define success now? So what
Yeah.
is different based on where you are in life and how you view the big picture of things?
Yeah. I think the big aha for me over the last year or two has been the importance of the environment, right? Environment dictates behavior, I think, more than we actually appreciate. I go to the gym and do 10 chin-ups. If you came along with me randomly, I'd probably do 15, right? Now, did I miraculously just get stronger and add on 50% more strength? No. All that changed was the environment. You were there. I'd like to impress you. This is basics of human biology. I believe truly that the strongest force in the universe, except for gravity, is peer group pressure. Positive or negative?
That's right.
The great things that we've
That's
done,
right.
because we had great people around us, and the dumb things or whatever, probably no one around or people egging us on to do the silly thing. Right. So if the environment dictates behavior and behavior dictates cooperation and cooperation dictates capacity, like our ability to get stuff done together, then the role of a leader is to create the environment for other people to perform. And that was my measure of success. As I started to integrate these rituals and just very simply bring our code to the beginning of a meeting, start the meeting with catch the good stories, where we would shout each other out or we'd share a win connected to extraordinary impacts. In my company now, did it elevate the capacity of people? That's our purpose statement and our behaviors to go with it. And every team can have this. And then you share your stories through your code to begin your meetings, because that's one time where you are together as a team. So it's a ritual that already exists. Let's just make the ritual better. This is Atomic Habits 101. The measure of success was I doing less of the work that I knew had low impacts? Was I doing more of the work that was moving the company forward? And back in the day, that looked like, am I speaking to not only principals of schools, but am I speaking to the superintendent of schools? Because if you're talking to a superintendent, you might be able to sell to 8 schools. Or if you talk to a trustee, you might be able to sell to 24 schools. So this is the thing that I find when I'm doing work with leadership. Once you expand your time and you don't do the work of your team, then you have to be smart with what is the next floor you need to raise with the time that you've now been given back. And I'm sort of saying to the world, spend a bit more time thinking about, is the environment optimized? So I'll give you an example of an environment that's critical to behavior, the reward system. If we're in real estate, that's why my work doesn't really work with real estate. If I'm trying to sell this property and we're teammates under the banner of real estate, but I sell it, I win, you lose, or vice versa, why would I cooperate with you? So if you want to change the behavior of your team the fastest, look at your reward system, because that's creating an environment for people to cooperate or protect and hide. And the opposite of teamwork is protection, and the opposite of cooperation is isolation. So by simply going, right, the reward system now, if Emile sells this, Michelle and Emile win. And if Michelle sells this, poor, then Emile wins as well. I'm now going to start to try and cooperate and help you sell more of these and vice versa. So that was my measure of success. And you know it, when you're a leader, you're doing the work and you're like, I shouldn't be washing the jerseys. I shouldn't be pumping up the footballs. I shouldn't be da-da-da-da-da. And then you can start to track that, and you can start to look at your schedule and go, wow, look at that space. I've got 2 full days free to go and build relationships with people that might move. So the mechanics of your business and the relationships with external stakeholders and vendors and so forth starts to elevate. So then you have to have the discipline as the leader to go and use your spare time for that, and not just get stuck in the rat race of still doing the menial, low impact stuff. So there's a constant review process that great leaders do, looking at where's their time spent and how do they delegate or delete it. And that was the measure for me. Am I actually out there meeting people that can help our organization grow? Are we designing new programs to have an impact on the kids? I soon realized that that wasn't my gig anymore. And I loved that part of it because I was the phys ed teacher of the business. But the energizers in the school, they had a better idea of what would motivate the kids. So I stopped doing that work and spent more time coaching other entrepreneurs, which actually led to this work today. And so the measure of success is, are you doing things that are high impact, that light you up? Because you certainly know what doesn't, because you're in when you're doing it. You know, you're washing the footballs or whatever it might be, and you're going, I shouldn't be doing this. That for me was the measure of success. And then have I optimized the work environments so that the biology of human cooperation will go up instead of the default of protection and safety?
So bringing this back to when you had said, here's companies that I or people that I won't work
Yeah.
with.
Mm.
And because I'm connecting these two together now, I am assuming then, in your opinion, if there is a company, a division, a department, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that has low morale,
Yeah.
doesn't get along,
Yeah.
fill in the blank, whatever it is it your belief that that is a reflection of leadership? That has to be that when you go in, you're not looking at the people who are bickering and arguing, that you're saying, I need to figure out what's going on at the top.
Yeah, it's a great question. So a lot of the time when we get called in, it's because there might be a change in leadership. And the new leaders come in with all the right intentions, but the previous environment that was created have them adopt this team, and they're like, whoa, and then I get this a lot. I often ask the question, now that you've been in leadership now, Michelle, for the last 3 months in your new role, what have been the 3 most surprising things to you? And then in one way, shape or another, in that top 3 will always be, I didn't know how hard culture change would be. Because it's behavior change. And when you think about it, it's the most difficult thing that we do, right? When I'm looking at that new organization, I'm looking first at the leader and their intentions and the way that they speak. Because if they're very me, and they, it's a bit of a red flag to actually take them on. Because at the end of the day, it's the leader that we're working mostly with to help them re-engineer their work environments to enable cooperation, to elevate the capacity of their team, so their performance improves. Elevate capacity and improve performance are synonyms, right? Now, inside an organisation at middle management, now we're in another challenge, because the environment of the org will often dictate the environment that they operate in. So then the challenge is to go, given the environment that we have to work with, how do we control the environment that we have control over? And you can see, and this happens to me quite a bit, where middle management and their performance as a line of business or department has gone right up, and the executive team have gone, hey, how did that line of business's performance go up like this? Well, they've been getting some coaching around teamwork and cooperation, and then we end up actually going up to the C-suite and working with them, which is where we can actually now augment all of the environments, which is where the really fun stuff begins. But the long story short is a leader inside a big organization will be able to get, to a certain point, knowing that some things they won't be able to augment, like the compensation plan. Okay, so you've still got to live in the rules of the game like a sports team do, but then you can control the controllables, build your code, create that safety, have open, honest conversations. And then at the end of the day, when you unlock your team dynamics and the heavy cognitive load for leaders to carry around these team members aren't getting along, they never actually get to the mechanics that actually moves the performance needle forward. So you got to unstick the human and team dynamics before you get to the mechanics. So I'll spend all my time there, 3 to 6 months, to unlock that, so that then the mechanics of their business can start to kick in. Because if you don't get the dynamics right first, you never get to the mechanics. And that was me. I was never getting to the mechanics of the business because I was too busy doing everyone's job. It wasn't that there was dysfunction between team members. Everyone loved what we were doing. It was me. I was in the way. And so that was a dynamic problem. That was a human dynamics problem. Unlocked that, team thrives. I basically got kicked out of my company, and it was wonderful.
Well, I love this conversation. There's 100 things that we haven't even had time to chat about, but this is all, gold to me. And you are exactly right. The impact of environment cannot possibly be overstated. Yeah. And everything else is just a reflection of that. In any work, home, fill in the blank is something that we all need to spend a little more time with, especially when, like you and I were saying before I hit record here, that when we already are in a culture where everything is intentionally sent out to divide us, we have to double down on what it takes to feel like a team again. And that's a global team. There's no
100%.
end to where does the word team end, even though, like I said, there's a lot of forces out there trying to convince us otherwise. So if somebody is been listening and thinking, I want to learn more, I better listen to that talk of his. Holy cow, this is amazing. I also hear that he's got a book coming out. All of the things that are exciting and upcoming for you. What is the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, look, probably just the website, emilestudham.com and or cooperationworks.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I haven't actually got a big social media presence. All my work has been mostly referral based, which is great. But we are writing our book at the moment, scheduled to be published next year. So I'm learning how that's a process a lot longer than I would always want. But yeah, look, emilestudham.com or cooperationworks.com is the easiest way to get through to us. The book is about our system, and with a bit of a focus on the first 30. So for now, we've got this world of AI. Never have we had startups beginning their business with AI, right? We've had the internet, and prior to that, we didn't have the internet, all that. But now we've got this world where, what I'm seeing with AI is beautiful things, amazing, wonderful things, but using AI that's not in cooperation with your teammates or the organizational objectives is creating exponential chaos. AI in human cooperation, exponential impact. So the book is designed specifically for teams of under 30, whether they're startups or inside of bigger organizations. And how do you create the work environments to optimize human cooperation in this age of AI? So simple and practical tools and rituals, lessons from pro sport, tools that we use that are tried, tested, and proven. And it's not that difficult. It's easy. A lot of this stuff is easy to do, but it's also easy not to do. And I think that's where the challenge for the 21st century leader becomes, because of this constant connection and ability to be distracted. If you don't engineer your work environments intentionally, the demands of the external environment take over. So we really want to help leaders in this 21st century get their work environment right so that they can actually elevate the capacity of their organization. So, yeah, would love to talk to anyone who's interested. Love talking about this stuff, and I just really appreciate our time together.
Oh, me as well. I appreciate it. And like I said, I could go on for hours with you on this topic,
So.
hands down. I close the show the same way with everybody. I ask the same final question. So this podcast included. What is one thing that you absolutely believe to be true?
Oh, one thing that I absolutely believe to be true. Yeah, it has to go back to the core. The energy you give off is the energy you get back. Yeah, and that was our mantra of "Good on you, mate," which was one of our core values we taught the children in our Aussie accent. Still, that's what "Good on you, mate" meant. It's the energy you give off is the energy you get back. So that for me has to be a law of the world.
Well, and I'm gonna wrap this up with your words of wisdom. I'm gonna piggyback these two together. I cannot say this enough, and people around me are gonna get sick of me being you because it's just gonna happen. I can't stop it now. The energy you put out is the energy you get back. And let's imagine if you do not create an environment, relationship, work, fill in the blank, that isn't safe, that doesn't make people feel like they belong, that doesn't make people feel like they're on a team, that is the energy you're putting out there.
100%.
And what you're getting back is from that energy every time, 100 out of 100. So, boy, thank you for all of this. Thank you for your words of wisdom.
Pleasure.
Thank you for your time here today. I hope people listen to this and share it. Every one of us is on a team. Every one of us, some form or fashion, every single person is part of a team, and every single one of us could be on a team that performs better.
Love it. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And for everybody who has been here, let me just say this. His website and where to find him will be in show notes. So don't worry about that. You can just scan through and click on that to learn more and be the first one to sign up for his book. I know I will be. So that said, thank you everybody so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of the Game Changer Podcast.